Oh, good.
Well, again, my name is Fessahaye Mebrahtu, as somehow it falls in what was discussed, because we are a church, we have not made too much change over the centuries. The Rite Catholic Church is a branch of the Eastern Rite, Oriental Church of the Alexandrian tradition of Egypt, but we are not Coptic, just to make sure that you don't confuse us, because Coptic is Egypt, Ge'ez or Ethiopic or Ethiopian Eritrean is for Eritrea and Ethiopian. So, what I would like you to understand where I am coming from is, number one, I would want to introduce you to this ancient church, which is even a mystery to ourselves. So one of the objectives is who this church is. The other one is to inform you, as we are discussing about the global south, the south is here. The south is here because of migration that we have discussed a lot yesterday. So the church of the south, specifically the Israelite, which says that we have been from the beginning, from the time of the apostles. Christians are now in the new soil, and they are the last ones to come to the new world. Yet, we are making an impact and progress in being planted in the new soil. So, just to give you, and the other one is to give you an overview of the history of the Israelite Christian tradition, which is in our category today, division between the sub-Saharan Africa, where Christianity is supposed to be preached by the missionaries, which we say, no, we've been there. But if we do not have a full understanding of this church, its contribution and its tradition, not only to ourselves, but also to the rest of the world, then becomes just a relic of history rather than a dynamic and an organic faith that is living. So what I would like you to give me a couple of minutes is, can I do this? Where's the cursor?
In the drawer. Yep.
Okay. This is something that I would like you to observe how. Please.
I think you press Control.
Oh,
click
right.
that,
Yeah. Hold on, the control key.
Control click and then click. Open the
Because you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Excuse my.
No, it's fine. That didn't work either.
Okay.
Double click.
So this is the new, the Eritrean, the Israelite church being planted. This is a few years back. I just want to.
A recent Saturday morning mass at St. Gabriel Church in Charlotte had a decidedly African flair. A small community of Eritrean Catholics celebrate the Divine Liturgy monthly in Ge'ez, an ancient language and rite that is a part of the Universal Catholic Church. Many of the people attending the Mass came to the United States as refugees from war and political upheaval, but safety can also be lonely.
It's very difficult to be away from home and not be able to exercise your religion and your faith properly. Sacraments are hard as is, and especially when they are in different languages, it gets a lot harder. So our main objective here is not to promote our God's right, but to exercise our faith.
The 2-hour Mass is celebrated by Father Kindamarian Hatgu Gibrihowat, who simply goes by the name Father Kidane.
We are blessed to be part of this body. In the Corinthians chapter 12, it says Christ is the head, and all the faithful are parts of the body. So we are blessed that we are part of this Catholic Church, and St. Gabriel, really everybody welcomes us.
The opportunity to come together each month is about more than attending Mass. For these recent immigrants, many of whom work in convenience stores or drive taxis, the time spent in Catholic fellowship is important, because as with any group of people with a common cultural background in a strange land, it enables them to build community.
I mean, like, at regular Mass that we go to, they don't, like, you don't clap during the songs and stuff like that, but, like, here you do it.
For now, the Eritrean Catholics are grateful for the hospitality extended to them by St. Gabriel Parish, and in the truest American tradition, they dream of building an Eritrean Catholic Church in their adopted country. David Haynes for the Catholic News Herald.
So, this is a church that is new and aspirational. And what do I have to do with this? The church, the Israelite church, was started in Washington, D.C. in 1984. And I was the first parish. 3 years later, after I graduated from a theological school, I was the lay pastoral minister there for 8 years. After that, I was able to connect with the rest of the Israelite Catholics in US and Canada. So my role was locally to help the community there, be a parish. By the time I came, I left in 1995 and came here. From about 100 people, we were almost to 1,000 souls. My plan coming here was, the vet who was here to help me, support me, and Peter. We went to the same parish. I taught her children, but the Israelite church never left me. I was never left alone because I was the conduit, try to organize. For example, this childless community, I was in particular that went there and started that community with the leaders. Not I am not starting, but identifying the leaders. So, in 2001, we reached the climax where there was a pastoral crisis, and there was a need to address the issues. So we met in Chicago. I had a good friend, former my pastor and my boss, Bishop Perry, joined us. That gave us the legitimacy. And we started this Eritrean Catholic of the Israelite in North America. And we organized in such a way that we identify a leader in each city, major city, community, where they frequent to worship. And we use that a way of organizing, but I told them that choose a patron saint of your choice by consensus among yourselves. Even if you are worshiping at St. Michael, call yourself Our Lady of Mercy. So that's how they did. We organized, within 3 years, the Eritrean bishops wrote a pastoral letter to the Eritreans abroad called Be Steadfast in Hope. So that was the catalyst that we were in terms of trying to build a community outside of home. Mind you, the church to begin with was after the martyr of St. Stephen that were able to break out of the walls of Jerusalem. And the Eritrean and Ethiopian church is only the world that forced us to be outside of our boundaries and to be in the diaspora and live our faith and witness it. So the whole aspect here, that the name that I gave, the title is Faith and Identity in North America. How many of you Africans found out that you were blacks? It was only when you came here. So, self-identity is important, especially for our children who do not have the direct connection to their homeland, to Africa, to Eritrea, to Ethiopia, to Nigeria. But we have a legacy, a history of faith that roots them, tells them that you were not evangelized by missionaries, you were evangelized directly by the apostles. Maybe a stretch, but at least we claim that one. And is but when in this process we have now over 24 parish communities in the US and Canada, about the same number of priests, and we have about 10 that are officially parishes, and 2 in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in Atlanta have their own property, and Northern Virginia also have one. The goal is to have an eparchy or a diocese of our own. If you are a Latin Rite, you have to be subsumed into the local church. For us, because of our apostolic tradition that goes back to Alexandria and to the apostles, we have the right to keep our right. Right and ritual. So our effort is, though slow, is making progress. In 2020, the Ethiopian apostolate got an apostolic visitor. And in 2022, the Eritrean Catholics got an apostolic visitor for North America and for Europe. Apostolic visitor in the Latin Rite is when you have a problem, the church sends you a visitor to investigate. For us, is almost a quasi-bishop or a kind of an overseer of the pastoral needs of the community and does a report on the progress and the needs of the community. So, which means our vision was to have our own bishop. Now we are in that. We are about 10 years behind, but in church, 100 years is like 10 years. So we hope things will move in our direction. So who is this Rite church? Number one, what is Ge'ez? Later on, I have all the books for you to touch and look at. You may not be able to read, but I just want to make sure that you have a feel of what. I brought every priest. How many priests are you here? Technically, each one of you should have in his pocket a cross like this one.
Oh, yeah.
When you approach a person, when a priest or a person approaches you, he kisses you. I'll explain to you about this one. But speaking of inculturation and adaptation, this is the oldest instrument of the ancient Egyptians, not of the Christians. Still, you can see it in the hieroglyphs exactly as this. We just improve it to resemble the church, artifacts. So, this church, you heard the drum, which is the African essence of. You heard the exuberance of the celebration, and also the adaptation of. This is a cross, but in some places is shaped like the ankh. Ankh is also the symbol of life in the ancient Egypt. Imagine how adaptation took place where we are struggling today. Nobody was questioning the Israelite church in incorporating supposedly to be a pagan or non-Christian means of worship to make it a Christian. So the Ge'ez is the language, which is the Ge'ez language is very similar to Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, but also we have to understand there are more Semitic languages in Ethiopia and Eritrea than the whole Middle East combined. So where does the Semitic language come? That's another question that linguistics have to explore, but I am giving a hint if you are curious. So, officially, Christianity in the Aksumite Empire, which is today's Eritrea and Ethiopia, came around the early 300 and became official about 330. How it happened was there are many versions. The Acts of the Apostolate, the Ethiopian eunuch that we heard about yesterday, is supposedly to come from there. We don't have a historical evidence. But Eusebius also says that St. Matthew the Evangelist preached in Ethiopia. At that time, Ethiopia was not a defined state, a nation state. It was all the sub-Saharan Africa, so it could be anywhere. Could be in Nubia, which Christianity flourished until the 16th century. It could be in our place. But is almost the evangelization of Eritrea and Ethiopia is very similar to the Irish story of St. Patrick. These two brothers who were traveling to India were shipwrecked and pirates picked them up, and the uncle died, and the two brothers were taken to the Aksumite court and were servants there. I don't call them slaves, they were servants. They were given the freedom to exercise their faith, to teach, and to have important role. At the end, from St. Frumentius, that we call it Abuna Framinatos, Abba Salama, the father of peace. And he eventually converted the king. And the king, because of it starts from the leadership, it became a state religion around 330. The first sub-Saharan Africa nation to be Christian state religion, but also the second after Armenia to be a Christian state. So, earlier I mentioned about the Semitic languages. So all this, the Afro-Asiatic, the ancient Egyptians and the Semitic languages are not different. So this is what I mentioned to you earlier. So after the introduction of Christianity, the Bible was translated into Ge'ez. lot of people think, how was this translated? You need the scholars to have that translation, who know the languages, the Greek, the Hebrew, the Aramaic, and all the other language, and make it into Ge'ez. And Ge'ez, having its own script, was able to do that. And this is still, well, I'm not talking, this might have been taken about 5-10 years ago. This is how the monastic tradition in the Orthodox churches is still living exactly when St. Anthony and St. Pachomius started in the 3rd, 4th century. Okay, this is what I was going to relate this one. And this is also the stick that the prayer stick we use. My side point is that don't be afraid to incorporate your African and Asian religious symbols to incorporate them into Christianity. So, how does this church exist in this secluded area? Number one is because it became a state religion. Number two, it has its own letters to write, its own scripts. And we do have 81 books of the Bible, which are more than the Protestants for sure, more than the Catholics as well. And there is a saying, a scholar says, I have learned all these 81 books. Why am I still worshiping the farmer and adoring the merchant? The allegory that you were saying is the double meaning. Why am I still poor is the other meaning is that, why am I still worshiping? Why am I not worshiping God? With that, we are known for our this allegorical and double meaning thing. So, I don't want to pass. These are what I would like every African to use in their worship. Don't be afraid of the priests. You have the power. So just to regress back first. Number one, when Aksum became the Christian kingdom, we were the first nation on earth to mint coins with Christian symbols. And the cross are, sometimes they call them Coptic cross, but they are mostly Ethiopian or Ge'ez crosses. And they are but very much similar, but don't forget they look, the ankh is also, and their meaning is, the cross is a tree of life for Christians, out of which we gain salvation. So, the relationship between these two is. However, I just want to make sure that, as scholars, I hope I whet their appetite in terms of making it curious about the Rite. Still a lot to be discovered, but also I want to make sure that occasionally I teach a course called the role of Africa in Christianity. Without Africa, including what Professor Joseph was saying about areas, controversies come when there is an intellectual pool. Most of the controversies came from Africa. And we had a rich intellectual pool. Even the concept of council and synod is an African concept, though it might have been misappropriated, because what Simon was saying about gathering under a tree, making consensus, that should not be lost to our scholars, because without Africa there is no Christian Europe. Whether it's the East or the West, how does the Israelite Christian tradition has made so much into, kept the African culture as well as kept the Christian authenticity. They were very jealous in terms of keeping the doctrines. If you call us monophysite, that is a misnomer, is a philosophical clash of cultures rather than in semantics. We, as the Israelite Catholics and Orthodox, we have exactly the same liturgical celebrations. Finally, we also have created our own system of calendar, not about, we just celebrate our New Year a couple of weeks ago on September 11, but no, the liturgical calendar. I just want to bring it because yesterday we had the Marian devotions. Tell me, when is the Nativity of Mary celebrated in the Latin and East Church? Okay. No, it's September 8th. Ours is celebrated May 9 or May 4, or Gumbat 1st in our calendar. Why? That's something that we need to be very curious. Because this is also one of them, and most probably 50% of our churches are named after different attributions of Our Lady. But that is where the adaptation is. Just if you scratch the surface, you'll find that it might have been, I'm not certain, but it might have been the starting of the rain season where fertility, spring is where Mary becomes that, her birth becomes the change. Our New Year also starts John the Baptist, the herald of the New Testament. So our calendar mimics the Bible as well as it honors the local culture with the Christian imposition. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but I'll leave it here.
Thank you. That was quite refreshing. I mean, before now, I never knew anything about these rites, and I must confess, so it was very, very enlightening for me. So now, time for questions, and I'm sure you have a lot. Okay, let's start from the top.
Sure. All right, thank you, Fessahaye, for this. This was great. I'm kind of curious, especially with your own personal experience working in Milwaukee here, and especially like some of the archdiocese and whatnot. Is there any like kind of outreach or even evangelistic efforts done by the Ge'ez community, especially in the diaspora, to like, because I know in my time working with youth in Milwaukee here who are several more generations removed from their African roots, a lot of times Catholicism is seen as the white man's religion. So I mean, could this provide even maybe an alternative to black people in America, black youth in America maybe that feel kind of alienated from Catholicism?
Well, let me tell you, number one, our children who are born here, essentially they are African Americans. Sometimes when we are not in that environment, they are alienated from their own roots. But at this time, we are still for that survival, trying to be a church, so we have not branched out into reaching out. However, the Latin Rite is also very funny. It's very territorial. So, keep it yourself is where the attitude is. In fact, in some places, we have been said, are we sure that you are Catholics? So we have that attitude. But I had a friend in DC, an African American, who eventually became a Melkite, an African. But had I stayed there, he would have become a Israelite, because he was searching for this where he can say mine. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
All right, so
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of questions. Did you say you have 81 books of the Bible?
Yes.
So,
I have one here. Yeah. By the way, you can buy it from Amazon. But
but my question is the canonicity of it. Like, how do you determine your canon? Why is it different from the normal?
well, there are the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees.
Also, you added all these apocryphal books.
Well, you call them apocrypha, no? They are canonical to us.
So my question: How do you determine your canon? How was it determined?
We don't know. It was there, and there are a lot of apocrypha books, if you bring that word, that are not included. But these particular words, these particular books, are in there. So the Israelite church had its own way of determining, but at least was able to determine these are canonical books, and they are in there, and they are if you want to have them, they are in English.
Okay, so second question. So your priest, right? They follow Roman Catholic.
Well, we accept as it is, though we have been, until recently, the Protestants were the only one that were translating the books into the vernacular.
No, your priests, are they celibate?
Yes, well, I'm glad you brought it up, and I had mentioned it, but it will be, when you read my paper, you will read it there. There is an imposition from Rome that has, though we have the choice, about 100 years ago, after 100 years becomes a tradition, that in the canon law. So they have kind of, but our bishops, it's up to our own bishops to make a decision, but somehow they have been formed and accustomed to that, and they kept it that way. But technically, we should have an optional celibacy. Okay, go ahead. You're on the.
yeah, we've never had this.
Yeah. What about the seminary?
The seminary is still.
You train the gays.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Do you have any of those outside of Ethiopia, Eritrea?
No, we have not. I serve at the board of directors at the Secretary Seminary, and I had made some relationship by a couple of priests have come to study English. My hope down the road is that to connect ourselves to an institution like this one where we could be able to train Christian vocations.
Any questions?
Quickly, I know you're talking about gays' rights, Catholic, but you didn't mention, first of all, the Tewahedo church, because I live in Hollywood and they have a big church in California. Is the gays' right completely different from the Ethiopian Coptic Tewahedo church, right?
Okay. First, take out the Coptic.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. The Tewahedo, we are united with Rome.
Okay. So what year did the union occur?
Well, I'm in a Jesuit institution. The Jesuits messed up in the 16th and 17th century because they tried to Latinize us, and it created a civil war.
Yeah.
Then in 1838 is when Catholicism was reintroduced by accepting the right, the gays' right. So that's where we are as Catholics. However, even at that time, they were celebrating Mass in the Tewahedo Church. The Tewahedo Church was when the name came in 1888 by that conference that I answered in the question earlier. So the Tewahedo is Orthodox of the Oriental Church. Tewahedo is the local name. Doesn't have much more meaning, but means one, a unity. So we are the same. We don't have any difference, but because of this until the Jesuits came in Ethiopia. And Eritrea and Ethiopia were the same at that time. There was no concept of Catholic and Orthodox. There was only Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or traditional religion. So the word Catholic in our Nicene Creed is translated simply the church all over the world. Orthodox is translated the true faith. The word Orthodox in our area was introduced as a name when in the 20th century, not before that. Before that, we were Christians, not Catholics, and Orthodox. So, however, the Tohado Church believed the primacy of the Pope as a moral leader, not an executive leader. The other thing that I want to bring to your attention that our ancestors, whether the Orthodox, you call them at that time, they always paid pilgrimage to Rome. We have the St. Stephen the Martyr Chapel within the walls of the Vatican City, just behind St. Peter. And we are the only church that we have the Ethiopian college within the walls. Mussolini tried to take it out, but Pope Pius XI refused. Because we go way back, our footprints, our history goes way back to the early church, because the monks, the people who had the means would go to Jerusalem for pilgrimage, and they would go to the pilgrimage to St. Peter and Paul. As a result, we had that. And by the way, when was printing press started? 1450. 1613, we had a book of the Psalms printed in the Vatican, and we had a printing press since that time in our language. So the connection was always, there was no formal split between the Tohado Church and the Catholic Church per se. Sorry.
So since
Yeah.
you have a question, just to make it short, I will take two of them at the same time.
Okay.
There are different orders within the monastic tradition.
Yes, well, they follow exactly what the Egyptian monastic tradition is. We have the Pacomian as community style, and we have the Hermetic style. So those are the types. But the ones that I showed as a picture are the Hermetic ones. They are each in foxholes and in this inaccessible area. So for us, for our especially the Orthodox, I'm always hesitant to say the Orthodox Church, though they prefer it to be with the rest of the Orthodoxy. They live, their faith is so strong. Graham Hancock, who wrote The Sign on the Seal, who was a Jew, he was a non-believer, but after visiting Aksum, he became a believer.
Oh, my question is about the youth. Do you think that the youth born here, or of course parents from Africa, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, do you think they have the need to really connect with this, or maybe the parents are the ones forcing this on them?
Well, that's why I call it faith and identity. In this country, as a black person, you need an identity to anchor. For us, this is faith, history, culture, and everything. So our kids may tell you it is boring, but they still are proud to have that day. So face the process that they can eventually, embrace it, but they see it, and any church that you see here is full of youth and young couples. So, yeah, you're right. Depends on the family, but sooner or later they will be confronted as black people living in this country to be asked who they are, where you come from. And we bear our African names, and that makes them even more identifiable, and we question who they are.
All right, that's a good place to wrap it up.
Before the break, there is